Good afternoon, you guys. Today I'd like to look at my Inquiry Project digital presentation entitled A Careful Response to Emetophobia. This is for Communication 616, Communicating Mindfully for Queen's University of Charlotte by Jaleesa Campbell. And as an outline of today's presentation, first we're going to take a look at my abstract, then the findings, discussion, conclusion, recommendations, implications, suggestions for future research, and then lastly, my references. So, for my abstract, I'm sure you guys have heard of someone say at one point in time that I'm afraid of heights, or I don't like spiders, or I'm afraid of worms. And those are some fears that I think some of us are like, what do you mean? So I want to talk about emetophobia today, which is defined as the irrational fear of vomiting. It is an understudied topic, and most who struggle with it are female and admit to its development in their youth. And the field of epigenetics shows that our ancestors' experiences and lifestyles may be able to have some effect on our DNA. Yet, we might be able to reverse those genetic results. And strategies for communicating more ethically when struggling with this fear and working to overcome it can be found through these three theories that I've researched: anxiety and uncertainty management, dialogics, and relational dialectics. And for my findings, so I like to tell you guys that I can recall that when a friend or family member got sick during my childhood, I struggled. So one of the worst things that I didn't want to hear, and even today, is someone say that I feel like I'm going to get sick, or I think I'm going to be sick. Okay. And using these two cats in the upper right hand corner, we're going to call the striped one Stripey and the orange one Orangey. So Stripey's having a good time with her friends. Everything's going well. And then someone says, I feel like I'm going to be sick. And Stripey's like, what? And so Orangey's like, oh, no, 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 no. This is so disgusting. So, you guys, this kind of relates to how I feel or what's triggered within me when I hear those words. Okay, even today I struggle with that. I'll admit. And I found out that I was not alone. Catherine Newman, who is a mother and writer of a New York Times article, put one of her experiences into words that I could relate with. And Catherine said, for one thing, it means that if you are a child feeling your very rottenness, your tender mother, the same one who puts her loving lips to your feverish forehead and brings you poached eggs on a tray, is likely to bolt out of the room with her fingers in her ears, out of the room and down the stairs and into the living room, where she will crouch on the couch with her eyes squinched shut and a pillow pressed over her head. The children's father clucks soothingly while I yell up the stairs, are you feeling any better, honey? And I was like, well, this sounds like me to a T. And I don't have children. But reacting this way isn't ethical, right? What is the ethical thing to do in the time of someone's need? How should I really respond? And William Goodykonst and Mikhail Bakhtin and Leslie Baxter provide some help through their theories that we're going to talk about. First, I'd like to look at managing anxiety and being mindful with Goodykonst's anxiety uncertainty management theory. And Goodykonst defines uncertainty as a thought and anxiety as a feeling. And he talks about how effective communication can be had through managing anxiety and uncertainty. And mindful communication involves listening to what is before us and seeking to negotiate new possibilities. So in essence, don't work from a previous script. And dialogic ethics encourages us to listen from a place of concern and being attentive to the other. And then next, I'd like to talk about rewriting one's script with Bakhtin's theory of dialogics. Now, Mikhail Bakhtin mentions how dialogue and our choices are capable of affecting our lives, what we say and what we do. And he talks about how centripetal and centrifugal forces are at work within our lives. And to define what those are, centripetal forces, he says, are forces that work to establish order, and centrifugal forces are forces that work towards chaos. um, and he says that we can co-create our futures through our interactions. If we be attentive and listen, going back to dialogic ethics, and reintegrate ourselves into the moment, then we can create new tendencies for future moments that involve illness. And then next, I'd like to look at navigating one's relationships with Baxter's theory of relational dialectics. Now, Leslie Baxter's theory of relational dialectics teaches us that although social life is messy in many respects, relationships are produced through discourse. So that means that relationships don't just necessarily happen unless you're born into a family, right? But like, for instance, think about family relationships and dynamics. You build those relationships through communication and interaction, right? And we need to be mindful of our communication, especially if in the event of sickness. Don't work from a script and respond to the call of care. And care is a human answer to the call of the other, a willingness to meet and attend to someone other than oneself. Now I'd like to look at and ask the question, can tendencies be passed down? A look at epigenetics and how we might be able to reshape our DNA through experiences. So I also considered the possibility of a person inheriting tendencies through genetics. And if we think about our family members, we're able to discern certain characteristics that we might have based on another family member, right? And I want to look at about epigenetics. And epigenetics is the study of how genes are altered through the adding of chemical compounds to our DNA. So just to better understand epigenetics, it can be understood through an example of hearing a song played on a piano. And I thought Marnie Chesterton did a great job of giving an example. So imagine hearing one of your favorite songs played on a piano. It sounds very nice, right? And this song is going to be likened to a sequence of your DNA. Now, some of the notes are played loudly, some of the notes are being played more softly, and then some of those notes in the song are not even heard at all. That is like epigenetics, okay? And epigenetics, it works with our DNA by those additional chemical compounds, but our DNA is still the same. The song that you were listening to is still the same song. It's just that there are some changes within that song. And gene modifications, I found out, could be transferred between generations. And a behavior can be affected by events in previous generations, which have been passed on through a form of genetic memory, according to animal studies as they suggest. And if you'd like to look into this further, I would suggest looking up the Dutch famine that happened around the 1940s, as that looks at humans and about the transferring of certain conditions and things involving humans. But I also found out that some epigenetic marks can be reversible, which was kind of mind-blowing. So it may be possible that through my current interactions and experiences involving moments of sickness, I might be able to affect my DNA. I don't believe that I can overcome emetophobia on my own, but with God, I believe that I can, because it is something that, although it seems it is irrational, it's something that's real, and I think that it should be dealt with, not just for me, but for others. So in conclusion, emetophobia doesn't have to be the final destination for sufferers. Putting into the practice the advice from the aforementioned theories can help. And epigenetics reveals how our genes may be affected by our experiences. There are alternative solutions such as cognitive behavioral therapy, as well as support groups to help. And for my recommendations, going back to anxiety uncertainty management theory, I would say that someone with emetophobia should aim to manage anxiety through difficult situations by being mindful and attentive to what is at hand. So being mindful or thoughtful of the historical moment that is at hand that they're dealing with, and trying to communicate mindfully. And going back to the theory of dialogics, one should aim to avoid working from a script and being fully immersed into dialogue to help create new tendencies and not reinforce those current tendencies that we have where we might want to run away and avoid, right? Think the world is falling apart. No. we want to create new tendencies. And with relational dialectics, the dialectics theory, one should aim to manage tension and difficulties in relationships through continuous dialogue and provide care when the moment calls. Now, for implications, if sufferers ignore this issue, they will allow their current tendencies to be perpetuated through their family, social, and or even work lives, and even possibly perpetuate this issue genetically. One might not be as able to live a full life of experiences such as enjoying friends, like going out to different places, getting married, and raising a family. One might also cause relationships to suffer, given this issue. Okay, for instance, we need to be nurturing in those critical moments, right? And if we're not nurturing, thinking about family members or friends, then it's kind of, it throws people off, right? Because naturally you would think, well, someone should help, right? Or someone should at least try to comfort in those moments. And so for some suggestions for future research, further studies should be done with those who struggle with emetophobia to gain more insight, and further studies should also be done into the human epigenome to understand how certain tendencies may be inherited to help not only those with emetophobia, but with conditions, other conditions as well. And these are my references. And I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that the presentation has been enjoyable and insightful. Thanks again, and have a great rest of your day.